joy it is today to welcome our friend, Pastor Ronnie Floyd, to the summit. Let me just tell you a little bit about Dr. Floyd. For some of you may be new to the area and do not know him. In 1986, Pastor Floyd came to be the senior pastor of what is called now Cross Church, Northwest Arkansas, a multi-campus church. In 32 years of ministry in Northwest Arkansas, the church has reached for Christ and baptized over 18,000 people. In 2001, First Baptist Church of Springdale became a multi-campus ministry with the beginning of the church at Pinnacle Hills, now Cross Church Pinnacle Hills. In 2010, the church changed its name to Cross Church and now has 3 campuses in Northwest Arkansas, in Springdale, in Rogers, and Fayetteville, and a campus in Neosho, Missouri. The church is committed to planting churches regionally, nationally, and internationally. Dr. Floyd's dream of continuing to train leaders came with the establishment of the Cross Church School of Ministry, a 1-year residential ministry experience that prepares leaders for life, ministry, and gospel advancement globally. To the glory of God, over 100 students have graduated and moved on to full-time ministry. In 2016, he completed a 2-year elected term as president of the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, Dr. Floyd is leading out in the advancement of many things around America, loving each other, racial unity in America, and championing spiritual awakening in America. In August 2017, Dr. Floyd was named the president of the National Day of Prayer Task Force. He continues to serve as senior pastor of Cross Church. That's the bio. Let me just tell you a little bit from my heart, could I? As someone who's been along his side and worked for him for 25 years and known him for 30 years, Pastor Ronnie Floyd is a man that if you go anywhere in Northwest Arkansas, you would be hard-pressed not to run into someone whose family or a friend of that family has not been touched by this man. He has reached out across all denominational ties, all racial ties, all economic ties across this country, and particularly right here, to love people. He's a man that deeply loves people. He's a leader among leaders. He's a visionary. I've seen him in the foxholes, and I've seen him on the mountains, and he's the same man. He's a man that has a vision in his heart, and one of the best I've ever seen at letting that vision become reality as he gathers people to that vision. His family has always been foremost in his heart and his mind. And today we're honored to have the First Lady of Cross Church, Gina Floyd, with us. Would you give it up at the summit for our First Lady, Gina Floyd, today? Thank you for being here, Gina. And of course, his son Nick was here. His other son Josh is a football coach at a very large school in Birmingham. If you go to Dr. Floyd's office today, you'll see a lot. But one of the things you'll notice, he loves faith, family, and football. Would you give it up for my friend, Dr. Ronnie Floyd?
Today, I'm really honored by all of you that are here, and thank you for coming, for being your faithful to the summit for all these weeks, and we're really, really grateful for that. I want to begin by giving you a quote that I really think really will help you in your life and in your leadership. Here's the quote. Every advance you make as a leader will require a leader shift that changes the way you think, act, and lead. John Maxwell just wrote a book, released it recently, called Leader Shift. What a powerful read. The 11 essential changes every leader must embrace. Now think about what he said. Every advance you make as a leader. How many of you want to advance as a leader? Absolutely. That's going to require something from you and from me. It's going to require, Maxwell says, a leader shift. Now, what does that mean? We're going to talk about that. But I think it's important. It determines and challenges us to change the way you think, the way you act, and the way you lead. Has this ever happened to you personally? I believe it probably has. But here's the question. What is a leader shift? If you haven't read this book, it would be a great read for you. Listen to what Maxwell defines this as being. It is an ability and willingness to make a leadership change that will positively enhance organizational and personal growth. Making a leadership change, organizational and personal growth that will enhance growth in your life and through your leadership. Let me ask you today, are you growing in your life? Are you growing in your leadership? If someone were to pin you up against the wall and ask you, can you tell me how the last 5 years you have grown in your life? What would you say? If they pinned you up about your leadership? Because what happens is the longer you do something, the less prone you are to grow in your leadership, unless you're a growing leader, because a growing leader grows in their leadership. But many leaders stop growing, and when that happens, that's extremely deadly. So I hope that you're changing always to your environment. It's one thing to be competent. It's another thing to be competent and current. Easier to be competent than competent and current. In 1995, I experienced a real transformational moment in my life. It was one that literally charted a new path in my life. I believe that everything Cross Church has become, and everything Cross Church is, and everything that's happened through my life since 1995 all flows out of this transformational moment that goes that far back in time. I was already making a shift in my leadership in 1990. I had just come. The church was on a fast pace of growth, and the Lord was really blessing it in an extraordinary way. But I was in the process of change, but there was something transformational that happened to me that led to a leader shift, where I began to think differently, act differently, and lead differently in my life. My personal growth led to organizational growth. That's a little principle I want to raise up for you today in case you're taking notes. Personal growth always leads to organizational growth. The organization you lead, doesn't matter what it is, it will never outgrow you in your personal life. Maxwell calls it in another book, he calls it what? The leadership lid. You can do all you want with anything you want to try, but you're never going to go above the leader and the lid in his leadership. Now I want you to consider the opposite scenario of that statement on the screen today, that personal growth always leads to organizational growth. Think about this on the other way. When you stop growing personally, your leadership ceases to grow. You hit a wall. You stall. Your personal paralysis leads to ineffective leadership. Now let's think about that phrase. When you stop growing personally. Now let's just pull aside for a moment. Are you growing personally? What are you doing to grow personally? Think about what the phrase says. When you stop growing personally, your leadership ceases to grow. In other words, you never can lead beyond what you are personally. So you're the key. You hit a wall. Anybody here hit a wall? I promise you, you've been leading anything for any amount of time. You've hit a wall. And to say you haven't, you're not telling the truth. We've all hit a wall. And sometimes you really hit it, and I mean it really takes advantage of you. And when you do that, you experience at times a personal paralysis. You stop. And when that paralysis hits, your leadership becomes ineffective, and a paralyzed leader who can't make a decision, who can't lead with a vision, who can't go forward, leads a bunch of people, supposedly, who can't do anything because the organization will paralyze because of the leader who is leading ineffectively. It was the fall of 2001. 911 happened. We started the church at Pinnacle Hills, I believe it was the third Sunday of August. And the very beginning of this, one of the reasons I really wanted to come here was to influence the business persons in this region because they were so prominent. And so when we came up here, all along we were going to do the Northwest Arkansas Business Persons Summit. It was a part of our strategy. In fact, let me tell you the story. We met over in that little building over there. I believe we had 13,000 square feet. That's where the church at Pinnacle Hills began. And we would meet with the summit. We would have, a couple of hundred people. I started it. I taught the whole time. I taught for the first couple of years, in fact. I taught leadership, principles of leadership. That's where I stayed because that's exactly what our goal was. And I was at the same time engaged in a lot of stuff. I was speaking on Sunday morning because we had to go to 3 services over here. We had a lot of stuff happening. I was speaking on Sunday night, and at one point I was doing the Bible studies for the coaching staff at the University of Arkansas. I had a lot happening, and finally, I just finally reached the conclusion I can't do this constantly. So we began to pull in people from across the region, but also some of the greatest leaders in the country. It's been pretty amazing. I've interviewed, because I used to interview a bunch of them, some of the most powerful men and women in this country. We've had from the head of Ritz-Carlton all the way to some of the great men and women that are located in this region, as well as across the world, from football coaches to broadcasters, you name it. We've talked it all. I've always wanted to comprise a book, not my book, but really take, if I could ever define, the top 10 summit presentations that I remember hearing through all of these years since 2001. It'd be pretty remarkable. One time, about 5 years ago, I thought I'd pursue that idea, and I had somebody get me all those, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way, just 10. It's just amazing the quality of the people that have been on this stage. So for 18 years, think about this. We have done the Northwest Arkansas Business Persons Summit. I think we began having no less than 12 gatherings in the fall and another 12 gatherings in the winter and the spring. We used to go past spring break. We now do somewhere between 16 to 20 gatherings annually. Therefore, listen to this. Since 2001, we have had no less than 300 gatherings just like this we're having today in the last 18 years. And you know what we've done the whole time? Invested in leaders, invested in leaders, invested in leaders. Let's just say we averaged 250 people weekly. which I think, quite honestly, would be larger when you look at the whole scheme of where it's been over the last many years. I mean, we've had our largest summits ever. It was a tie. Truett Cathy and Bobby Petrino. Coach Petrino had just moved to town, and we had him. And Truett Cathy came to town. He was a rock star. I think we had 837 at both of those summits. Extraordinary. They were everywhere. They were literally all up there on the stage. It was incredibly powerful. But let's just say we average that, assuming that we had 250 various people weekly. You know what that means? That means that the Northwest Arkansas Business Person Summit has invested in 75,000 people over these 18 years. Now, these 75,000 people were not unique leaders, unique attenders, because many attend, like some of you, over an extended amount of time. Here's my point. I don't know how many unique people this has touched over the years, but no question, thousands and thousands of people. Listen, this is the power of investing in leaders cumulatively. You see, what goes on in so much in today's world of leadership in America, we think about today. We think about today, and we don't think about, let's invest for days away. Let's go way beyond that. But the power of investing in people cumulatively. You wake up and everything appears to be different. And everything we've ever done out of the summit, everything, it all goes back to this personal transformational moment that I had in 1995. Because I experienced a personal leader shift. A change in me led to changes in the way that I led. Now, what happened to me in 1995? Which I think most of you can understand if I just simply say it this way. So this is where I'm going to keep it. Leadership stopped being just about me. You ever been guilty of that? I shifted to an entirely new level of leadership and began investing and building other leaders. This happened everywhere in my leadership. And that transformational moment in my life has affected everything that my life touches today. That's why today I want to talk to you in the time I have left with you about the subject of building leaders. Building leaders. I really think that I thought I had to reach a certain age because I was a boy when I came here. I was a boy. And now I'm just a little bit older. But I was a boy preacher. I had no business being here, honestly. I was a little boy. And I'll tell you what, Dick Trammell, I could do a summit presentation on this subject. Everything I ever knew about leadership, I learned in Northwest Arkansas. I could write a book on that. Because this area has some of the greatest leaders I have ever observed anywhere in my life. You see, great teams and great leaders build a team of leaders. And you can only build a team of leaders when you are building leaders. Many of you have read the book called Leading Change by John Cotter. He writes about the importance of creating what he calls the guiding coalition. In other words, if this fails, the project fails, the vision dies, and change becomes impossible. So what you have to do, you have to build a coalition of leaders. Building leaders is imperative to creating the coalition. In fact, you can look at any failure you've ever had in leadership, and it probably goes back to the violation of that principle of investing and building leaders and not taking the time that you needed to take to build the coalition to go along with you on the journey. Let me tell you what I've discovered through the years. Here's what I've learned. Building leaders is critical to leading any organization, including leading change inside and through an organization. I'm telling you, the greatest investment you can make in your life is building leaders. Planting seeds in the lives of leaders and doing everything you can to take people up just a notch. Just a notch. And we all need to improve our leadership. Over 4 years ago, I was able to develop a friendship with a pastor located in Birmingham, Alabama. His name is Chris Hodges. Chris leads a church called Church of the Highlands. Now, Chris is an extraordinary leader. I'm telling you, there is not one business person in this room today that would not be mesmerized by his ability to take systems and wear you out with those systems. He's extremely and extraordinarily gifted. Chris's church just started, I think, 16 years ago. Now today has 20 campuses all over the state of Alabama, plus an online campus. It's pretty amazing what's happened in that church. They're bringing the good news message all over the state of Alabama and beyond. I don't know how many people that church touches weekly overall, but here's what I do know. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. That church every week, when you put all what they do together, they have over 70 worship services every week on all those campuses. No less than 35,000 people are a part of that church. You know what Chris is about? One thing: building leaders. I helped him recently, for a friend, secure him as a speaker. So just 3 weeks ago, I heard Chris again in New York City. And man, how powerful he was. He had about, I don't know what we have, Nick, maybe 60, 70 of the largest churches in the country. Their pastors were in that gathering. And he absolutely mesmerized them. He had them right where he wanted them, because, I mean, he is so effective in building leaders. Simplicity absolutely reigns in his leadership. I heard him make a statement. It's worth the price of your meal today. So you better get this one. Chris Hodges said this: we do not hire people to do jobs. We hire people to lead teams. What a statement. Because how many times do leaders hire other leaders to do a job? We don't need to hire people to do jobs. We need to hire people to what? To build teams, lead teams. It's all about teams. When that church had a serve day about 3 or 4 years ago in the city of Birmingham one day, 32,000 members of their church came out and served that city for a full entire day. That's called transformational leadership, powerful leadership, epic leadership, making a difference in your leadership. I mean, here's the bottom line that every one of us need to come to. And the bottom line we need to come to is this whole thought about building leaders, transformational leaders. I'm in my 33rd year as pastor of this church. 7 years ago, I made a decision that we would begin what Buster referred to a moment ago, called the Cross Church School of Ministry. A 1-year residential ministry experience that prepares leaders for life, ministry, and gospel advancement globally. I mean, how many of you would love to have and go to a surgeon today and he never did a residency? You're his first patient. And that's really what happens with most ministers. So, you know, the fallout rate is pretty great with ministers. So I'd had it in my heart for a long time to do something about that. And so we created our own 1-year residency. That's what it is. A 1-year residency with us where they function on our team. In fact, they can even gain up to 30 hours of master's credit by being a part of what we do here to work on their Master of Divinity degree. We have 9 partnerships, about to be 10 partnerships with academic institutions around the country. We get Thursday morning in the classroom, but the rest of it is totally in the field because it's a residency. You know, by the time August comes, we will have graduated over 140 of these men and women. And we've hired no less than 14 of them full time. It's almost like having a little farm club, watching them. Who gets our DNA? Who really does what they need to do? And boy, I tell you what, we watch, and if there's an opportunity, we do what we can to make a difference. But we've sent out all the rest of them across the world. And boy, I tell you what, when I look back, I wish I would have been smart enough 30 years ago to have done that very thing, even when I was a young boy in ministry. You know, a guy named John MacArthur taught me something one time. We were talking about the subject of discipleship, and John told me something I've never forgotten to this day, and that really is applicable for what I'm about to say, and I wish I'd have heard it all those years ago. But John said, you know, to disciple someone, all you have to do is know one thing they don't know and take them there. Well, you know, I figured out of all the things in leadership, surely I could find one thing back then when I really go back that I could have taken somebody up. Don't ever negate the power and the influence of building leaders in your life. Listen to this statement today, and I believe it deeply. If you want to change the world, then change a life. Change a leader and deploy this leader to make a difference in the future. I hope you'll do that in your life. Make a decision to build leaders. Find a way to build leaders in your company and through your company. So let me move toward our last few minutes together. What happens when you and your organization choose to build leaders? What happens with you and in your organization when you choose to build leaders? Let me give you a few things to consider. Number one, you shift your focus away from yourself and you shift your focus to others. When you decide to build the life of a leader, guess what? It's no longer about you. And you put your eyes on another leader. Now, the greatest thing you can do is to build your children. I mean, we ought to all want children that live right and lead effectively. That should be our goal. And so with that, that should be our goal even at work. That we do everything we can to build everyone up. Because when you are building leaders, you're focusing on others. You're not focusing on yourself. And the only way ultimately you're ever going to leave anything behind will be the people that you invest in your life. Because you can't take stuff with you, folks. And nobody's going to remember how much stuff you got. And they won't even remember your title. In fact, I hate to tell you this, most of your great-grandchildren even won't know your name unless you were alive when they were here. So your investment is important. Number two, you invest your time not just in the immediate, but also in the future. You know, that's what happens when you build leaders. You're investing not only in the immediate. We have to stop being so committed to the immediate that the only thing that matters is what is urgent at hand. We need to see that leadership is not about now only, it's about then. And everything we can do to deposit, to make a difference then, we have to do now. Number three, you plant seeds into the lives of others that may eventually bear fruit for an organization other than your own. Because we're so driven by ourselves and we're so big on ourselves and our own organization sometimes, it's almost like we have the mentality, well, you know, they're not going to be around here when, you know, later on, so why in the world invest in them? Well, it's not simply about you. Help that person grow. Help the organization that one day they go to grow. And they'll never forget that you were the one that planted seeds of leadership in their life. We never need to forget the people that invest in us. I still remember college professors. I still remember a high school football coach. I still remember people in my life, in my master's and my doctorate, that invested in me. I still remember people from my first church to the church that I have today who invested in my life, who took Gina and I when we were kids. We'd drive down from college, and they hired me to pastor for $75 a week. They told me I wasn't worth it, but they needed a pianist. And Gina was a piano major. And every weekend we'd go stay in somebody's home. They had a list. We'd go to different people's home every Sunday, and we worked our way through the church numerous times. Many of those people planted seeds in my life. They're dead and gone. But still, I know who they are. 4, let me tell you what I've learned in this. You look with great expectation for the next star to rise in your organization. Well, when you are building leaders, there is not a year, especially since we started the Cross Church School of Ministry, that we're just not amazed at somebody who does not rise up. And sometimes they're not even people we would have thought that would have risen up, but they know how to work. They know how to be disciplined. They know how to focus. They know how to act beyond perhaps even their age or their maturity level. And they're at a different level, all because of what somebody invested in them before they ever came to be with us. So look with great expectation for the next star to rise. And here's the 5th thing. You leave a great legacy that lives beyond your own life. You know, when it's all said and done, what are you going to leave? Stuff? Most of us aren't going to leave enough stuff for even those that we leave it for are going to remember much. But what do you live? What do you leave? Well, my mother and dad, they didn't have a lot. Neither one of them graduated from high school. They lived from paycheck to paycheck. My dad was a salesman who went door to door. My mom worked at J.C. Penney's after she worked at Avon or did Avon. I mean, hello, y'all know what that is? Most of you don't, but some of you do. So the point is what? The point is, I tell you what I remember. I remember the faith they deposited in my life. I remember the times, whatever it was, when the doors of the church were open, they were there and they had me there, whether I wanted to be there or not. I remember my dad's hard work ethic, my mom's endless energy. I remember their love. Boy, I could go through a litany of people in Northwest Arkansas that deposited in my life. And even though they're gone, they left a legacy in and through me. Never forget who deposited in your life. None of us can be where we are today without others who did not invest in us. One day, you want to be remembered like that. So don't wait till the last moment when it's too late to invest in others. For the past 32 summers, it's a long time. Gina and I, we've taken our staff team and our spouses on a 4-day retreat with us. When we started and came here, it was about this big right here, these 2 tables. And now it's, we take them and their spouses. I don't know, last year's around 90 or so that we took who are on our team. Gina invests in the spouses. I invest in the ministry team. We bring them together. Boy, you think about all the years of faithfulness in doing that. The times when maybe it wasn't convenient, when you're sitting on a beach side and you're trying to enjoy time off, and my wife looks at me and says, man, I don't know what I'm going to do at staff advance this year. And so we'd brainstorm a little bit. But you see, you never forget the power and the influence of investing in leaders. Listen to this statement today. Building leaders is what leaders do. It's not a choice. Not a choice for you, not a choice for me. I mean, if we're real leaders, we're going to build leaders. And we should inspire leaders, and we should inspire leaders to aspire to be great and to be better than ever. I tell you one thing I've learned in my life. You never, ever apologize for investing in the lives of others. People say, why would you do that? Why would you take the time to do that? Why would you spend this and do this? Because I tell you what, the greatest investment you will ever make in your life is when you build leaders and you invest in leaders. Nothing is any greater. And so spend the rest of your life doing something about what you can do that can ascend you, can ascend them, and can ascend the organization that both of you are a part of in your life. Let's pray together. Lord, thank you for your greatness. Thank you for your love. Thank you for this gathering. And we give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen.